Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. We are going to use today's show to highlight what we call the best of the Real Florida. Just recently, Real Florida Magazine released the results of the fourth annual, in this case 2017, Best of the Real Florida competition. You as viewers or readers of the magazine were able to nominate and then vote your choices for Best of the Real Florida in many categories, including retail products, special events, and so forth. You can go to Real Florida Magazine on Facebook or to the website realfloridamagazine.org to see all the results of that. Here with us today is Josh Roberts, a 2008 graduate of Chipley High School. One of what we really hold up as a good role model for our community, certainly for our young people coming up today. When we come back, we're going to talk to Josh about his experience educationally, what he's done since he left Chipley High School. In this case, one of our valiant few in our military, possibly going to be in harm's way with things coming up, certainly heating up as we're seeing in the news. But we're going to let Josh talk about all this and more when we come back, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Josh Roberts. Thanks for taking the time to come on over here. You know, your grandfather is Bert Roberts, and your grandmother is Susan Roberts, school board member here in Washington County. Susan said to me back a couple weeks ago, my grandson is going to be here. She was just beaming. She's obviously very proud,
right.
And rightfully so. In the pre-show, got a chance to meet you a little bit. But thanks for being here today. Bert, your grandfather, stopped in for a short while when you came. You were a 2008 graduate of Chipley High School and have done a lot since then. Talk a little bit about growing up in Chipley, Josh.
So yeah, I graduated in Chipley High School in 2008, and I was involved in baseball, football, and basketball for most of my time there, mostly baseball and football, baseball being kind of my centerpiece of my both scholastic and athletic experience. I definitely focused more on that.
Andy Compton was your coach?
That's correct. Andy Compton was my coach all 4 years. And baseball is definitely probably the forge of kind of my character as a young adult, in the sense that it taught me leadership, responsibility, competitiveness, and a lot of humility. And
how did you guys do statewide for the years that you were there?
We did pretty well. The group I played with, I played with them since I was 5-6 years old. So we were very well. We won District 2 out of the 4 years, and made it to regionals my senior year with some heartbreaking losses to some private schools. But overall, it's a great experience, and I'm definitely grateful for what it taught me.
And I will interrupt you there for a second. Blake Wilson, who's now currently the athletic director and head football coach of Chipley High School, has been in that position for about a year. He was a longtime assistant coach in football, not sure exactly how many years, but he certainly was part of the community, his wife and children. And when he came on the show, right after being named athletic director about a year ago, I asked him, to what do you attribute, Blake, the fact that we have so many stellar athletes, scholastically successful students, just people that you would hold up as role models for your children and grandchildren, come out of little old Chipley. And you can hold up Trent Forrest, for instance, CHS graduated with above a 4.0 average, a 4.3 or something like that. Talk about overachiever, went on to FSU, doing extremely well in college basketball. Definitely a role model, and there are many, many of those. I just happen to focus on him. We have many people in the Washington County system, not just Chipley. And he said it's the spiritual base, it's the family unit, it's the fact that we're small enough to be able to embrace those important values, but big enough to still be exposed to that bigger world, so that, in your case, our sports teams can go on to these larger tournaments and to do well. Win or lose, at least get that experience. I think somebody might have been speaking out of turn. I hear something about maybe you went kind of sideways a little bit during those years?
Yeah, I definitely had a reputation for being passionate, which was a good thing in ways, but I didn't really know how to control it, and I didn't know how to temper that passion. In a lot of ways, my competitive spirit would come out in anger, frustration, and even on some few situations, violent. So it was trying in the sense of being a young adolescent male and having this spirit and this aggression, but really not having the experience and the maturity to control it. So,
well, what would you say to someone in that situation now? You know, high school, first before that, even the middle school, lots of testosterone, lots of life changes.
Yeah.
You're dealing with things that not only do you not know how to deal with, but you didn't know existed out there.
Right.
Your body is doing things, your mind is doing things, you don't have a clue. Looking back, all of us can say, man, I don't know how we even made it through that time, especially with several hundred of us all in that same situation. You mentioned frustration and anger and acting out. Not unusual,
No.
and especially when you get into the athletic world, because you're encouraged to be aggressive.
Right.
You're encouraged, no harm, no foul, that's the way, but it takes an awful lot, and more importantly, it takes great leadership. Andy Compton, longtime, very successful coach, but just a good person, good teacher, role model himself.
Certainly.
As well as all the other, again, just pointing him out, but all the other coaches and teachers, instructors, who are able, because of their own experiences and because of experiences of dealing with somebody else who may have had that same problem, being able to help walk through. Were there teachers or role models within that system that were able to help you at the time?
Certainly, there certainly was. Coach Compton was definitely a big driver of it in baseball. He somehow knew a pretty good way to deal with me, and that sometimes was hard gloves, sometimes soft gloves, but he definitely was instrumental in allowing me to grow into my own leadership style. Additionally, Susan Saunders was a math teacher of mine, Karen Pritchard, physics, chemistry teacher. They were all instrumental in kind of leading back to what you were saying about spiritual, family, community outreach. That's what I think the lesson I took and how I was able to come out of those years of frustration and kind of not knowing who I was I knew people cared, and I knew the community invested in me along with a lot of other young people. And it was more than just my family. I knew my family cared and supported me, but I knew parents of other players, other students, just the community in general cared about what we did, whether it was in school or on the baseball field.
Your family has to care. That's their job.
Right.
The community, not so much. So if you're able to engage that community, to get their support, it's got to be helpful, and having that support system. So you made it through high school. What did you do after high school?
So after high school, I went on to Chipley College for a year, where I began general studies leading to an engineering degree. That was my initial goal, was to get an engineering degree. So I did a year at Chipley, transferred then to Gainesville, Florida in Santa Fe College for another year to complete my associates. Meanwhile, I worked some in and out jobs here or there, both at Chipley and around the local area. And then
Well, let me interrupt you one time there. Santa Fe, is it still a community college or is it a full bore college
it's a
now?
4-year college like Chipley.
When I lived in Gainesville, a long time ago, it was still a community college.
Okay.
And it was an excellent campus, a great school, but at the time it still was a community college or junior college.
Mm-hmm.
Much like Chipley, certainly within the recent past, was also that junior college.
Right.
Lest we gloss over it or forget to speak about it completely, we find ourselves today on Florida Panhandle Technical College campus, right next door to drafting. You mentioned that you dual enrolled and actually did some drafting while in high school. Talk about that.
I certainly did. I dual enrolled my senior year, and I would come over to take drafting after lunch with Miss Taylor, and it was kind of the initial exposure to me in engineering and some of the modeling techniques that we would use down the road in engineering. But yeah, it was a good outlet for me to learn how to create, learn how to take something structured, learn lessons from that, but then expand on it and use kind of my creative side to create something of my own, while being mentored from someone like Miss Taylor who had a lot of experience.
Did you already have the interest in the engineering aspect before you got into the drafting, or did that help to lead you in that direction?
I had always had an interest in science and math. specifically space. I was kind of inspired by NASA, the space shuttle, those type of things as a young kid. So it was in the back of my mind, but I honestly never thought it was possible, never realized those dreams until around my senior year I started becoming more interested in opening up to those possibilities.
So you graduated high school, went on to Chipola College for a year, went to Gainesville, to Santa Fe College. Take us from that point.
Okay. So I finished my AA, Associates of Arts in General Engineering. I got my prerequisites done at Santa Fe, and then went on to the University of Florida, where I pursued my bachelor's in Aerospace Engineering. And there,
Aerospace Engineering, what is that?
Aerospace Engineering, it's essentially combining aeronautical engineering, which is concerned with flight in the atmosphere, air-breathing engines, and then astronautical engineering, which is concerned with space flight. So they combine the two in academics to give you a broad, brushstroke exposure to both.
At that point, knowing what you ultimately did, but at that point, what did you see yourself doing in your future?
Honestly, I did not know. I knew it was going to be the hardest thing I'd ever done, and that was really my focus when I chose it. Was I had an interest in space and flying and science and math, but more than that, I knew. Well, honestly, I didn't know if I could do it. I'd never known anyone who was an aerospace engineer, and I didn't know what it would entail, how difficult it would be. So it was more of an attempt to prove something to myself. And sure enough, I found out that it was one of the hardest things I had done at that point.
So you graduated from FSU with that degree?
University of Florida.
I beg your pardon?
Gators.
Right. Yeah. I forgive me. Both sides. And again, having lived in Gainesville myself, was there that's a tough criteria that you took on there. That's a tough curriculum. Gainesville's a party town. Right. The university, even Santa Fe, the whole town. I mean, it is what it is. You go 5 miles outside of town, and you're in cow country.
Right.
Gainesville, stuck right there. I remember Leonardo's Pizza and all that University Avenue. Were you tempted, or did you succumb to that party atmosphere, and did it cause you any problems in the long run?
Certainly, the temptations were there always, especially with some of Florida's most talented-looking women. There was definitely temptations all around, but honestly, the culture of the school and the competitiveness of the school, I allowed myself to kind of insulate myself with people who were heading in the same direction, and I honestly didn't spend too many nights in the bars or the clubs. I probably spent more time out being rambunctious when I was in high school than I did in college, funny enough, but
got it out of your system.
Got it out of my system, yeah. So I knew I was there to work, and I was also preparing for a military career by this point. So.
And what got you interested in that direction?
Well, I did an internship with Siemens Energy, and it was an engineering internship that I had in Orlando, Florida, the summer after my sophomore year. And I enjoyed the science, the technical aspects of it, but I was in a cubicle. I was sitting down for 8-10 hours a day, and I realized I had a lot of energy. I didn't see that was something I wanted to do for 20, 30 years. So I immediately kind of fell back to some dreams I'd pushed back in my mind of flying and being a pilot. And that summer, when I made the decision to no longer pursue a career in engineering, I chose to pursue a career in the military and the occupation of flying.
Would it be fair to say that taking that military direction was probably the fastest and easiest way for you to get into that pilot seat?
Certainly at that point, yes, it was. And there's other ways to become a pilot, vice going through the military, but I didn't join the military to fly. And there was a distinction there. My goal wasn't to become a pilot necessarily. My goal was to serve in a manner other than myself, and couple that with my interest in science, my interest in aviation. So it was a very natural, seamless fit to go down that path.
Taking out the need for the adrenaline rush of flying, you forego probably what could have been an extremely lucrative career in the private sector in that chosen field in which you found yourself at that point and were qualified to pursue that military career, which lot less money, certainly,
Right.
but as you point out, that opportunity to serve. At what point did that switch get clicked? You know, you talk a little bit about, you know, high school and baseball days and all of the testosterone-laden issues there. At what point did you evolve into this guy who's all of a sudden now saying, you know what, I'm not worried about that six-figure job. I want to serve, and I want to use my talents in the best way possible to do just that.
Well, in a lot of ways, I'll say it started in 6th grade for me with 9/11. I wouldn't be honest if I didn't mention that it played a big influence on who I have become, because I can remember sitting in class watching that happen. And I had desires and the interest in serving when I finished high school, but wanted to pursue the college route, and something, for whatever reason, it wasn't the right time. But it soon came back, and I realized that unfulfilled calling to serve and give back in that capacity was, like I said, unfulfilled. So I realized that the military path was going to allow me that opportunity.
We're coming up on the 16th anniversary of 9/11 here in University, just a few short months. You were 11 years old when that happened. You're 27 now. You've just graduated from the University of Florida, go Gators, and where do we find ourselves going now?
So funny enough, we're 2013, the military's drawing down now, the wars are kind of in many ways winding down, and I found myself commissioned. I graduated, commissioned to the Marine Corps, and they'd say, hey, we don't need you right now. You're going on inactive reserve for 10 months. And so therefore I had to find a job, had to do something else. I was a commissioned officer, but I wasn't getting paid, and they didn't need me. So I found myself moving to Colorado, and I picked up a job working at a summer camp, counseling high school and middle school kids.
Who better?
Yeah.
I mean, you were the product of everything that you had been forged by, inclusive of that troubling time.
Right.
All right, so you moved to Colorado. You go through your 10 months of inactive status. What happens then?
So at that point, I moved to Quantico, Virginia, and I started what's called the basic school.
So you were called up at that point, or they notified you that?
Well, I knew it was coming.
Okay.
So they said in March of 2014, you'll be on active duty at that point.
Okay.
So I knew that it was coming, and I went through a 6-month basic officer course that all Marine officers go through to give them a basic foundation in leadership, infantry tactics, and learning how to be a provisional rifle platoon commander if that was ever needed. And it's essentially just a leadership school for Marine officers, where the other branches, you go to OCS and then you go on to your specialized training. We all go through this basic course together before we go off and learn to be pilots or intelligence officers, and it gives us kind of a common lineage. So I did that for 6 months, and then was chosen to go to flight school in Pensacola.
Okay, so I know that you're getting ready to go on to F18 Hornets,
Right.
but when you're in Pensacola, they're now in flight school. Take us through that
Okay.
time frame.
So you start out the journey to become a naval aviator. You start out in Pensacola, cradle of naval aviation. We start out in what they call introductory flight screening, which is a civilian training process. You learn how to fly a Cessna, basically. You get about 15 hours in that and do your first solo. So I did about 15 hours there around Pensacola Airport, and at the completion of that, you go into what they call API, Aviation Pre-Flight Indoctrination, and it's essentially a 6-week academic screener. They throw a lot of information at you.
Are you learning about jets at that point?
No, sir. You're learning just general aviation, weather, meteorology, navigation, engines. It's a lot of systems knowledge specific to the aircraft you're getting ready to go fly. But it's at this point, people haven't been selected for individual aircraft, so it's very,
Gotcha.
very general. And so, like I said, 6 months long or 6 weeks long there. And at that point, I volunteered to go to Corpus Christi, Texas for my primary flight training in the T6B. And from that point, I moved to Corpus Christi.
Pensacola, close enough that you were able to make regular trips back home,
Right.
and see family. Even Corpus Christi, not that far in the scheme of things. I mean, it's a hike, but it's not undoable like if you were in Anchorage or someplace like that. So how do you find yourself where you are today, and obviously with the prospect soon of going to the Hornets school, I guess you call it. Talk about that, and is that your choice?
It was. So you do 6 to 9 months in primary flight training, where all Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard pilots go, and we fly a single engine turboprop there, learning just fundamentals of flying. And at that end of that course, you're selected. You put your preferences down for what you want, but ultimately it's the service's choice to select either strike jets or maritime or helicopters or cargo. So I selected jets. That was my first choice. I'd always wanted to fly jets, and was fortunate enough to be in the right timing to get selected for that. So then I moved from Corpus Christi to Meridian, Mississippi, and was at Naval Air Station Meridian for 15, 16 months, training in the T-45 Goshawk. So there's two sections of that training, first of which is intermediate, where we kind of continue our foundation that we learned in the T6 with a lot of instrument flying, airway navigation. We'll do cross-country flights, but mainly it's formation flying. So we learn how to fly close together with 2, 3, and 4 aircraft. And then we get into the advanced stage, where it's starting to build the backbone of what you'll learn in an actual tactical jet. So we did bombing, low-level navigation out in the mountains of California. We did basic fire maneuvering, which most people know is dogfighting. And then ultimately we had to qualify on an actual United States aircraft carrier. So that is our final test in order to get our wings as the carrier qualification.
Everybody's familiar with the movie Top Gun. You were awarded Top Hook for your carrier qualifications. Talk about that.
So at the end of flight school, whenever we go to the ship, it's a very competitive atmosphere. Flying culture is much like athletics. It's
Fit right in, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It's very competitive, but it's very close. So we all compete with each other, not against each other, and there's a big distinction there. So when you go to the ship for the first time, and every time actually, you're always graded, no matter what. No matter if you're a new guy like myself, or if you've been in the Navy and Marine Corps for 30 years, you're always graded on how you land. So in doing so, when we completed our evolution, my grading was the highest in my class, so I was awarded the Top Hook Award.
Pretty prestigious, I would imagine.
It is. It's a good place to start, and I will say I was fortunate to get it. It took a lot of training to get it. However, we have kind of an adage that you're only as good as your last landing. So it's definitely not something to get hung up on. The principle is to keep learning and keep moving forward.
Also puts a target on you to maintain that level of standard. What is the primary mission of naval aviators?
Well, I'll speak from the Marine Corps side, because that's the branch that I'm ultimately a part of, even though naval and Marine officers train together in our flying occupations. But it's pretty simple. So Marines, their mission is to locate and destroy the enemy. Not a very glamorous or politically sensitive topic, but ultimately that's their job, is to fight our nation's battles. And therefore on the air side, we're there to support them. So my job as an F-18 pilot will be to talk to them on the radios and deliver munitions when and where they need it. And
So that will be in response to requests for ground support?
right.
Okay.
There's multiple layers of what we'll do, whether it's reconnaissance, deep air support, close air support, air-to-air sometimes, but ultimately it's to support the Marine on the ground.
To say that the technology involved in what you are currently doing is cutting edge is very simplified. From the forward-looking infrared radars to all of the things you read about in the science fiction stories, to many things which you probably can't even allude to because of confidentiality. Are you having fun? Are you achieving that which you dreamed about? And recognizing the fact that you're just really starting your career, despite the fact that you've had all of this training, are you achieving those dreams that you had back in high school when you might have been having issues, or when you were going dual enrolled drafting programs, getting involved, getting interested in that engineering aspect?
Certainly so. I was actually thinking earlier today that I remember when I was a kid running through my house with toy little airplanes, pretending to be dogfighting off something I'd seen on the Military Channel or the History Channel. And to have that inspiration as a young kid and somewhere implanted in my mind and kind of forget about it in a lot of ways due to growing and becoming a young man and being pulled in multiple different directions, but ultimately finding my way back to that path. And now here in a month or so will find myself flying that actual aircraft I used to play with is certainly a dream come true, and it's by far the most exciting thing I've ever done, and challenging while at the same time. It's fun, and I use that in a very strange context. It's not like going bowling, or it's not like playing golf, but it's rewarding and it's fulfilling because of the challenge, while also being allowed the responsibility to take a machine like that up by yourself.
You're getting ready to embark on the training of the F-18, a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, which will be entrusted to you and your skills. You still have some training left, and probably, arguably, some of the toughest probably yet to come. At what point would you possibly be put into harm's way should you be needed?
Right. So our training up to this point is a lot like a lawyer or a doctor. You have a few years of, we call it undergraduate training, really. And it builds a foundation. It builds a very basic knowledge of flying and aviating. And at this point now, I'm moving into kind of a master's level, or the beginnings of a professional level education. So the learning is only now just beginning. The systems get more complicated, the tactics become real, and the consequences become even more real. So with your question on harm's way, I have a year or so of training in the F-18 to become what we call a replacement pilot. So I'll go to a fleet replacement squadron, and I'll become proficient in flying the F-18 Hornet, at which point I'll then go to an operational squadron in either the East or West Coast, where I'll actually be deploying in support of Marines on the ground. So it'll be a year to a year and a half with some fudge factor in there, but a year to year and a half before I'll actually be in a deployable unit.
Are F-18s typically deployed from a carrier versus land-based?
In the Navy side, yes, they're always carrier-based. In the Marine side, we have a mix of land-based and sea-based. And I won't know whether I'll be on a land-based or sea-based for the completion of this assignment.
What would be your short version? What would be your advice to that high schooler? Got something on the ball. Everybody's been telling him he is. He's coordinated. He's done fairly well in sports, academics as well. Doesn't really know what he wants to do. Might be an adrenaline junkie already. Might want to be something interesting. I love Chipley, and having lived all around the world, I'm here for a reason. If you've been here and this is the only place you've been, you can't wait to get out. So recognizing that, What would be your advice to that soon-to-be graduate as far as not career path, not looking that far down the road, but what's that first step to at least start exposing yourself to what's available out there?
Two things I would say. First is to dream and to imagine. We often build our life based on memories, which are affecting our behavior. And when we're kids, we use our imagination a lot that affect our behavior. But at some point, we learn to, or we're conditioned to not imagine as much and use that to affect our behavior. So I would say, first off, to imagine and dream and understand that those dreams are possible, with the disclaimer that it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. The second thing I would say is commit and figure the rest out later. I have been trying to learn about real estate and some other topics outside of my professional career, and I recently heard a man say that about starting a new business. Just commit and figure the rest out later. And when I look back on when I was a high school graduate, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to go, who I wanted to be, but I made a decision in that moment and subsequently had to make further decisions down the road. But that decision in that moment allowed doors to open up several years down the road.
At least as of today, what is your long-range commitment to the Marine Corps? And then besides that, what do you anticipate your career path, all things being in a perfect world, what would you like to see happen as far as your career?
So I have 6-year commitment, essentially started from last February. So 6 years from essentially this year that I'm committed due to my aviation contract. I'll be a year or so in training, and then 3 to 4 years will be my first fleet tour. So that'll take 4 to 5 years, and then where I'll actually be flying the F18 in support of the Marines wherever our nation sends us. So that's my immediate near-range goals. I want to become an expert in my platform. High aspirations. I would love to go to the Top Gun school, whether it be the Navy or what the Marines call the Weapons and Tactics Instructor course. So you learn to become an expert, and then you go back to your unit and teach. So that would be my first professional goal. And then once that tour is complete, I want to become a forward air controller, where pilots are attached to ground units, and we are deploying, whether it be an infantry unit or an armor unit, and we're the ones talking to a pilot in the air, coordinating the attacks, the runs on an enemy unit.
The old Danny Glover movie, Bat 21, based on that scenario, on that pilot and FAC relationship.
Right.
Possibility of a career? Possibility anyway?
Definitely a possibility. You know, it's I'm recently engaged. We'll be getting married here in 10 months.
That changes everything.
It changes everything. But she's a military brat, so she gets it. But honestly, I don't know. I've kind of have a jack of all trades mentality. I'd at this point prefer to be maybe good or bad at a lot of things, as opposed to being really, really good at one thing. With the exception of flying, because I realize there's lives at stake with that. Therefore, I will attempt to be an expert at that. But otherwise, big picture, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know if I'll stay in 6, 8, 20, or if I'll get out and grow a beard and hike trails in the mountains. I'm honestly not sure. So, to be determined.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you.
You've set a date?
February 17th.
Wow. Okay. So, better part of a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of time to figure it out.
Right.
At least to that point. Probably, no matter how full of trepidation you are getting into that jet into harm's way, entering into marriage probably equally frightening.
More so.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. You're self-effacing, and the couple times that I've said that, I know you kind of shun that off, but we should not miss an opportunity to thank those who choose to serve in any capacity. thanks in advance to your future wife. Aware of mine here on the show anyway, that family that stays behind as equally worthy of thanks, because a good friend of ours, Bill Chomos, who actually does the play-by-play of the home football games here on FPTC Radio here at this college, tells the story about how it was very easy for him to load up and go to Afghanistan for that next tour, load up and go to Iraq for that tour, and would not, for all the tea in China, wanted to have been in his wife Christine's shoes, dealing with children and school and all of the rest of the runny noses and all that goes along with domestic life. He knew exactly what he was going to be doing. He knew exactly who he had to say yes to and who commands he had to follow. So, not to go into a long story about it, but we really truly believe that support system is huge, the family part of it. What import in your overall success, in your success thus far, has been that community and familial support, that family that always, that never gave up on you, that always had faith in you, those teachers, you mentioned a couple by name, that guidance counselor or the baseball coach in your case. Of what impact and import was that support structure in getting you where you find yourself today?
Well, I'd say invaluable. The one word that comes to mind, invaluable, essential. In my case, maybe not in all cases, but for me, I always knew that I was supported. Now, some people are driven by doubt, and people doubting them really pushes them. And there's some, I think, myself, who having support and having people count on them and expect something from them really pushed me. And it made me push myself. So whether my parents, my extended family, and teachers, coaches, and oftentimes I found it was more of the coaches, the teachers, and a couple local mentors that I had that made an exceptional difference, because like you said earlier, they didn't have to care, but they did. And I've looked back as I've gotten a little older, more distant, more disconnected from school, high school, and how that feels. And I've realized that they did make a profound influence on me simply because they cared. And it was evident when I didn't do well, when I showed out in anger or frustration or didn't perform as I could have in the classroom, it was evident to them. And I think those people showing that love and that support genuinely made more of a difference than I even may know now.
Second part of that question, will all of that help to make you a better father, husband, Marine?
Certainly. It's made me more self-aware, for one, and number two is aware of those around me. So I realize how I was shaped by people in my community, even strangers passing by sometimes as I've traveled the country. Strangers have made influence on me. So it's made me aware that people look at me, whether intentionally or unintentionally, or maybe just by happenstance, that we all, each of us, whether young, old, have an influence on those we come in contact with.
Thanks for taking the time today. It was very nice to meet you. Thank you for your service. Thanks for being a role model for us locally here, that we can truly tell our kids and grandkids, this is a kid that could have gone a couple different ways, through the love of the community, through perseverance and hard work, and the desire to have challenge and to consequently overcome the challenge, has done well. Best of luck going forward.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
Perhaps over time, as you move through your career, you'll come back while you're in town. Luckily, you've got family here, so you'll be back for the holidays when possible. Please make the effort to come by, if nothing else, just to say hello, but I'd love to have you come back on and share your stories. Keep us up to speed with where you're going with this career. But again, best of luck.
Thank you again, Paul. It was a pleasure.
Our guest today has been Josh Roberts, a local guy, Chipley High School graduate, telling in his own words his recent past, currently a United States Marine, somebody who probably sooner than not will be in harm's way, serving the people of the United States, serving the direction of his leadership certainly a story there for anyone who needs a little bit of direction, who has questions about what kind of love is in the community, and truly someone we hold up as one of the best of the real Florida. We'll be right back.